Hey, good morning, folks. We are going to continue producing art here for the upcoming book, Spelljammer Combat and Exploration, that we are creating. Give me a second here to check my signal, make sure I'm live, and then we'll go through my intro, and then we'll get to work. So give me a hot second here. Mic check. Mic check. Yep, seems to be working a-okay. Beep, 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 beep. Let's see, I'm pressing buttons here. There. Rip. All right, cool. So click. We'll go through my intro, and then we'll get to work. So I'll press a couple buttons here to boost my signal on Discord while I do it. Hey, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and then I publish them online. I've been focusing attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for the past 5 years. There are a slew of books that I've created and published on DMsGuild.com that are linked in the description down below. If you, they all have free previews, so you can click on any of them. On desktop, there's going to be a button underneath. You click into each individual book inside like bundles, or go to the product page, and underneath on desktop, underneath the image on the left of the book cover, it'll say full preview. Click on that. If you are on a mobile device, on the right hand side of the screen there's an eye icon which you can click on. Either way, it'll open up a PDF for you to take a look at an extensive free preview of any of the books that I have down there. If you're here for the artwork, there's probably about 150 different illustrations across the books that are provided down there. If you are a D&D enthusiast, the ideas that I build are either part of campaigns that I've ran or are new mechanics for campaigns I will be running that needed mechanics. So in either circumstance, the mechanics that are there for both DMs and players to take advantage of. I run campaigns in Dungeons & Dragons from level 1 to 20, a full character run, about every 200 to 250 hours. So I playtest these things at all tiers of play, so I stand behind them, I use them, many of them I've used for years. So check that stuff out. If you think this stuff is cool, consider making a purchase to support further shenanigans in the future. I've also just published that we've gone live here on Twitter. So if you're a Twitter X enthusiast, you can follow me at Phil Kearney. Otherwise, best way to support the stream, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We're climbing to 500 subscribers. That's our next goal. Prayers would be to hit that by end of year for the new year, but we'll see where we land. So during the course of the day, if you think this stuff is cool, consider more shenanigans in the future by following. So, hey, what's going on, Micah? And, have you ever considered doing PF2 stuff? Sup? You know what? I have never considered doing PF2 stuff. Hold on real quick. Just to finish up the spiel here, we're at episode 245. I created this book cover around episode 40. So you can go into the Spelljammer playlist here on my Phil Kearney channel and go check out the creation of the cover if you're interested. I talk about creating role-playing games, illustrating them, and publish them. So what's the process to that? When I have an idea, I will put together a game to play test it. If the game goes well, I will then write up the rules. We'll send it off to an editor to make the rules sound good, and then they get passed back to us. When they do, we then lay out the text that's provided to us into a layout program. Here I use Microsoft Word for all my layout shenanigans. And once we have all the pages built out, we'll take each individual page here, we'll extract it as a PDF. We'll then jump into Photoshop here. We will import the PDF as an image document that we then paint on, like such. So we're going to continue painting today. This is a ballistic crew that is taking shots at spell-jamming pirates. So we have some photo references down here for piratey looking clothes and whatever. So we're going to continue at this. So Pathfinder 2, you know, I was on board with Pathfinder 1 because I was a 3rd edition enthusiast when that came out. and I like 3E more than 4E. But honestly, I left D&D to go play Cypher, and then I eventually picked up 5th edition because I missed playing D&D. So, and I didn't want to go back to 3E because Cypher system is such a smooth, easy system to run. It started to spoil me as a DM narratively. So PF2, Paizo products in general are crunchy in the same sense that 3rd edition is crunchy, or that like MCDM likes to make crunchy stuff. It's crunchier than I like. And although I know I've participated in the 2nd edition playtest when it first came out, it just wasn't to my liking. So I haven't really embraced Pathfinder since then. I recognize the how they have streamlined the system significantly in 2E from 3E, but it's just not my flavor. Let's see. I have a stray mark down here I have to do something about, so here. And what's going on with you, buddy? There's the ballista. There's that dude. There's that dude. There. Bloop. Bloop. Is that a... No, that's a thing on a ballista. All right, I don't have to worry about it. Actually, I do want to worry about it. On second thought, you can. So here's what I want you to do, Hanzo. So I need to finish. Yep, I just got to finish these foreground dunes, so we'll be good to go. Hey, what's up, Kajiki? I'm still figuring out how to say your name properly. Kajiki. Yeah, there we go. Right on, Micah. Are you a big enthusiast of PF2, Micah? I honestly don't know. Let's see. I'll be finishing these asteroids tonight. I'm playing D&D tonight instead of tomorrow. Every other week I get to play in Curse of Strahd. We're 2nd level right now, so we're just getting into Barovia, I think. I've never played Curse of Strahd before. I'm a forever DM, so it's incredibly rare that I play at all. And honestly, every other week it's like 3 hours every other week. So Strahd's going to take probably a year or so for us to finish, but I don't mind. Take your time, my dude. Let's see. Figuring out posturing and stuff. Bop, bop, bop. Boo. No, I don't want this guy to get... Well, I want the... I want that. There. Do that. Okay, so I'm here 5 days... well, I'm here 6 days a week, Monday through Friday in the morning. I do Spelljammer Art like this. Mondays and Thursday nights, including last night, we do cartography for the Eberron adventure that I am publishing on the DMsGuild. On Saturday, tomorrow, I do commissions, and if I don't have any current commissions on roster, I'll work on my own stuff, personal projects. And then Tuesdays at lunch, I work on the Martial Power System, which is the mechanical text development of the alternate magic system that we have for martial characters. And then I'm going to put this shirt on top like that, and then go down here and grab some shadow. See if we can start sculpting this thing a bit. And then and then Mondays and Fridays are kind of float days. Sometimes I'll do stuff, sometimes I won't. Just depends on what I got going on. So today, in about maybe about 4 hours. Is that right? 5 hours is 11:30. Yeah, probably in about 5 hours or so. Sorry for not being specific. I'll be taking lunch today to continue working on martial powers. Tuesday this week, we built out we started on the Rune Knight, converting the Rune Knight to the martial power system. But Rune Knight's got a lot going on, so we had to stop before we finished. So this week, here Friday, I am continuing and finishing the Rune Knight conversion. So if anyone's interested in seeing, obviously here we have 107 pages worth of Spelljammer stuff going on. The Martial Powers book will probably end up being around 50 pages, and we are literally still writing it and designing it for a playtest live on stream. So once we finish all the mechanics and are fairly happy with the wordsmithing that we have, we're going to have a 3rd to 7th level playtest probably in the new year. We're going to be developing, like I talk about doing commissions and personal projects on Saturday. The first personal project, the personal project that we will be working on once the current commission is done, is developing the playtest campaign that we will be conducting for the Powers playtest. So people that are interested in seeing me develop a campaign, people that are interested in the martial power system, people that are interested in playtesting it, definitely like, subscribe, stick around. Quick spoiler, people that are members of my Patreon for at least $1 are going to have voting rights on when we play the playtest, and assuming that the playtest accommodates your schedule, if you are a Patreon, you will have preferential seating. So if you are a Patreon and you want to play, and it's like, say, on a Saturday that we're going to do it, then if you want to play, if you're a Patreon, you have first rights until the seats are full. If I have more people on Patreon than, say, 5 people playing at a time, then we'll do a raffle system each week. And if I have less people than 5 in my Patreon, then I will have I will put out a general call to interest for people to see if they're interested. There's a couple different Discords that I sharpen my knives on. I am a moderator at the Indestructible Designosphere, so naturally I'll be recruiting from there. I'll also be recruiting on Trent Monk's channel, Theurgy, probably down in Dice Try's corner of the industry. Dice Try does a lot of Magic the Gathering philosophy and role-playing content facing, less so concerned about mechanics, but about how color magic from Magic the Gathering is narrated in games or stories. Great guy, great channel. So I'll be because the color mana because the martial power system can be used with color mana, I will want to spend some time specifically working with color mana. So it's natural that his team may be interested. But that's all coming up. So you can check that stuff out if you think it's cool. You're definitely invited. I'm going to get rid of that, actually, because I feel like I'm still sculpting shapes. Ajiki, thank you. Thank you, Ajiki. So let's see. I should have this, when this piece is done, I should be finishing this piece tomorrow. My intention on Monday when we come back, this will be my last time streaming Spelljammer Art until Monday. I will be continuing off stream. I always work off stream, but most of the time I do stuff like charts and tables and maps, graphs, smaller, more technical stuff that aren't necessarily interesting for people to look at. Like, for instance, right now we're working on ship movement and scaling mechanics. So it's shifting scale, like you can shift scale closer, like to denote different distance, like the 500-foot scale, 50-foot scale, and 5-foot scale. 5-foot scale is for character-to-character combat, like on the deck of a ship. 50-foot scale is like fighter ship combat, as well as melee combat for larger vessels. And then the 500-foot scale is ranged combat for all vehicles, but beyond a mile in scale, like the 1 mile to 10,000 mile scale, that's beyond the range of normal combat. You can still hit things with a surprise attack, but once you hit them, they're aware of you. And being over a mile away from a catapult shot it's just, you can get out of the way. You can get out of the way without worrying about being hit. So we're in the process of building graphs, grids here that will put creature, ship tokens on to denote how movement happens. So like that's just a quick snippet that we're looking at there, and like that's here's page 16, where we're showing about shifting scale with stationary targets, also known as taking off and landing on things. So we're going to be developing a table here of far, mid, and then 5-foot scale between different structures, which isn't necessarily interesting to watch, right? And then we have that scaling with moving objects. Then we have mixing, changing scale between both moving and stationary objects, because these things make a difference, but you can break up. Like if you have a giant stationary object, there's no images here for us to look at, but we'll see it later. But if you have a giant stationary object that's like so large in comparison to you that it's basically not moving, like an asteroid base or a planet or a moon or something, that its own movement is so slow relative to you that it's basically stationary. Then that you're basically scaling your ship in comparison to that stationary object. If you have two objects that are capable of moving at the same speed, like two Spelljammer ships or two fighter craft, even two dragons that are giving chase, they can both fly and move at heightened speeds. So when you're scaling in and out, that's basically depicting your closing distance or opening distance during a pursuit or like a chase. And then there's both, where there's a large stationary object that sets as like the set piece or the overall like world map that you're traversing across. And then you also have your relative distance to each other. So if you're in a race from like say Am to Waterdeep in the Forgotten Realms, or in Earth terms, if you're racing to the moon from Earth, you may have two ships that can fly 10,000 miles per round, but there's going to be wiggle room between the two of them. So while they're both moving at a larger mutual speed, there's engagement of being able to change scale between each other. So when you are traversing a world map that is stable, you can use that as your base piece of where ships are moving like across the world. But then you also have individual scaled maps for your relative distance to each other, so that you can conduct like run and gun and like pursuits, jumping from ship to ship, opening distance so you can't jump on board my ship, closing distance so you can, and all this while you're still moving at like say 10,000 miles per round across the map that you have on the table. You're moving across the Forgotten Realms map, but while you're doing that, you also have your smaller individual map that you're fighting amongst each other. Like if there's like a swarm of ships, like a convoy. Like if you're doing Mad Max and you have a convoy of cars, and there's like 3 cars in the convoy, they could be moving at 100 miles per hour, but there's only like 20 feet of distance between the two of them. And that distance between the ships is where your combat map is, while you're still moving across the larger scale. You can then introduce at the larger scale hazards like gun turrets or creature hazards or natural hazards moving into like a snowstorm or something like that that can affect your environment overall, but you're still locked in that relative speed. So that's where you're mixing stationary versus moving targets and shifting scale between the two of them. And I have to build all the diagrams here to depict how that movement works to have relevance. Here we're looking at pacing, which is how you lock in your relative distance regardless of how fast you're moving. And then there's surging, which is a mechanic about moving at, like I might be at the 50-foot scale and we're moving at that scale, but then if I want to close distance to you, I can then zoom in to a 5-foot scale to depict my character jumping from one ship to another, for instance. That surging is where I'm moving at the 50 or 500-foot scale, but I'm representing that like on the 5 or the 50-foot map. So each square of movement at the 500-foot scale is 10 squares of movement at the 50-foot scale, which is 100 squares of movement at the 5-foot scale. So you need to have a means of expressing that difference in speed, even though you're perceiving the battle at different scales. And having that mismatch in size movement to scale of map is referred to as surging. You can surge as part of like charging, like if you're making a charge attack to ram something, that can be done as a surge action. But you could also use just normal movement. Like if you're at the 50-foot scale on a ship, as a movement, you can move 5 squares, so you can gently approach that ship so you don't ram into it and cause a wreck. Or you can intentionally overclock or surge your speed so that you're moving 500 feet as a single step to ram into the side of that object. So there's different ways. You have to, when you're dealing with scale, you have to have 5e language of movement, but being able to express that movement at 5 foot, 50 foot, 500 foot, 1 mile, 10 mile, 100 miles, 10,000 miles per square, because those are the speeds that these vehicles can operate at. Their max speed is 100 million miles per day, which when you grind down the timeline is basically 10,000 miles every 6 seconds. So you can have a 1,000 miles square, and if a ship moves 10 squares, that's 10,000 miles. But 1,000 miles is so far beyond the scale of combat that it's irrelevant. You can't effectively have combat at a scale larger than 500-foot squares because it takes more than a round for a ballista bolt or a catapult stone to fly more than even though you're in the void, you can throw something more than a mile away. It's going to take more than a round to get there. So if I scale out beyond the 500-foot scale, combat becomes irrelevant. So you don't have to worry about combat at a larger scale. If I then convert this to a sci-fi setting with lasers and stuff, then you can set an effective distance for lasers and missiles to be able to attack targets inside of a 6-second round, and that then sets the maximum scale of combat outside of the Age of Sail's depiction of your narrative. D&D is awesome in the sense that Spelljammer has like nearly infinite speed, but incredibly limited weapon ranges. So it forces you to pack your ships and your combat into these really tight spaces in an infinite setting. So it's really cool to have that dichotomy where you could travel millions of miles, but you can't hit something more than a mile away. So it forces that tight engagement where you can always, unless there's like fog or something, you can pretty much always see the thing that you're shooting at. So your own visual, your own eyes are always useful in combat. Spellcasting is always feasible because you can see a ship in the sky that's a mile away. Just like you can see a plane in the sky. It's miles away from you. It's easy to see that plane flying across the sky. Spelljammer is the same way. You always have that sense of scale that you can always target and attack stuff because it can't be too far away. But then, again, you have to have that language of being able to close in and then board a ship, which is... It takes 2 or 3 pages to explain all that stuff with really big charts to help walk you through the obviousness of what that is. But like laying down these, like figuring out the size of the like the size of grid that I need for this page specifically, like that, this. I'm still working on this, but this and this is the scaling of maps that I did that last night, for instance. So this is some of the stuff that we do off stage. Tonight, I'll probably have an opportunity to lay down, like, this is just a rough map, and then I only have ideations of what this should look like, but by like tomorrow I should have grids and a rough sketch of where each ship and like movement arrows and stuff need to be on all 3 of these pages. So by like say Tuesday morning, it'd be realistic that all 3 of these pages are completed, and there's only about 107 pages in the document overall. And I can knock down like one of these pages in a day or two, like with the time I have. Like I have like maybe 2 to 4 hours off camera each night that I can devote to this or other projects. So I'm always breaking up my time. I'm really rambling here, but the whole point of this is that there's a ton of stuff that I don't do on camera here that's keeping the ball moving forward. I devote most of my energy on camera here to doing stuff that's that's less thought intensive. Like building those charts is a thought process. It's a thought intensive process that doesn't allow me to ramble nearly as much as I can when I'm just freewheeling artwork. And so when I'm engaging in conversations with people here on stream, it's better that I'm doing something that I can just intuitively work on without having to think too much. Which is why I currently limit the Martial Powers stream to only once a week. Because that's like about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours worth of content where I'm having intense thought and going through that ideation process with you guys live. But if that was like the only thing I ever did, then I don't think I'd have the same mix of people, because art is a massive component to role-playing games. And I think that is ultimately, I'm an artist first. I've always been an artist first. It just happens that I fell in love with game design, and I found that game design, the philosophy here was, okay, so here's the story. Back in the early 2000s, when the 3rd edition was out and the third-party OGL scene erupted, there was a huge demand for independent publishers gathering stock art or requesting custom art, because there wasn't really much of a third party for D&D content, like nothing official. Once the OGL license was originally created, that kind of created a secondary market for Dungeons and Dragons, like an official secondary marketplace, because it was an open license, right? Other people could now compete in that marketplace. So there was a huge explosion of requests for fantasy artwork. So I started making a really good side hustle doing that, and for a couple months went live. And then broadband internet access happened, and I was then competing with Indonesia and like Germany and Brazil, like it went global, right? Freelance artwork went global. And so while my skill set was strong enough to get paid at that time, there was a same or better level of quality of art being produced overseas that had a third or even a fifth the cost of living that I do. So they could offer high quality for low rates, and I couldn't compete against that. So I started doing personal commissions, like character commissions. You're hiring me because you like my style and the attention to detail and my willingness to engage with you in providing you the custom solution that you haven't been able to find in stock art. And that sustained me for a while as well. But then I started hating doing private commissions. It's like, oh, I want to make this character for my boyfriend, or I want to make this character for blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh my God, I can see why no one was willing to commission you. I'm going to charge you out the ass for this stupid idea. I mean, not all of them were stupid, but after a while, I started getting really picky about the commissions I took, and then I was like, you know what? I hate this. I hate doing these commissions. I got to get out of this, but I still want to paint for the RPG industry. So that's when Ravnica was published. It was in 2018 for 5th edition, and I'm like, you know what? I always wanted to have a color mana system in D&D, and now that Ravnica came out and there is no color mana system, I should make a color mana system. And so I did, and then I was like, you know what? This is probably the only chance I'm ever going to have to actually like illustrate for Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons like pseudo-officially, and that's what got me started in creating supplements on the DMs Guild and got me into being a content creator in general. Until then, there was so much content from official sources that I'd never felt the need to homebrew anything. Ironically, it was the lack of color mana information in Ravnica that got me into game design in the first place. So I love that about Wizards, that they're so thin on content, because I never would have discovered this medium. And now I found that I could pay myself for artwork by building a book with my artwork in it, and then roundabout in an indirect means getting paid by people for my artwork because they would buy the books my art is in. And that's when it really locked in, and I fell in love with the idea of being a game design, and like becoming primarily a game designer that creates their own art instead of being an artist that creates game design. So that's the story. That is the Ballad of Phil. So there you go. That's how we got here. I think. Yeah. So that's me talking about. So I'm now that I started streaming because the project, like the core mechanic, the color mana books, they were the biggest. They were the only projects that I ever worked on, and they were immediately intimidating. Like the core mechanics book is 75 pages. The Knights and Tricksters book is like 25. The Universal Spell Points in High Magic, that's like 15 pages. Point Warlocks is like 12, right? So that's like 120 some odd pages worth of content that I knew I was breaking up into multiple books, but it was intimidating. Like, how am I going to get these things done? And I would procrastinate because I was so intimidated by the bulk of the project. And that's when I was like, you know what? I need to find some way to actually be held accountable to get this stuff done. Otherwise, it's never going to get done. And that's why, and then I started streaming on Twitch. And like, well, if I have to get this done, why don't I just sit my ass in a chair and then start streaming it and bullshit like we are right now to help keep my ass in the chair and at least be pushing pixels while I'm talking about stuff. And so that's what I did, and I fell in love with doing that. But then at the time, I didn't give a shit. So like, I was streaming Led Zeppelin and Tool and Pantera, Black Sabbath, a bunch of copyright strike music that got me to learn about copyright strikes and infringement pretty quickly because I was getting demonetized. And I'm like, you know what? I accumulate like maybe 75 followers over the course of 9 months. So I mean, it certainly wasn't explosive growth. But it showed to me that if I was persistent, I'd eventually be able to build an actual audience. So then I'm like, well, maybe I want to take building an audience seriously. So that means like I need to stop using licensed music, stop acquiring copyright strikes, and get serious about what I'm presenting, how I'm doing it, build some business ethics. And that's what led me to starting on YouTube. And then I started this YouTube channel, I think like in 2020, and didn't, it was 2020, and didn't do anything with it, and just completely ignored it. And then a year later, and then I realized that YouTube is where I wanted to settle, so I started streaming daily in 2021. God, was it really 2021? Jesus. I mean, that makes sense. I have like 600 videos so far. So that feels like 2021. No, 2021. I don't know. I can't remember. And I don't want to peel open my timeline to find out. I think I started getting serious about content in 2021. And then that's right. And then I ramped it up in 2022 to be more than just like 2 or 3 times a week to doing stuff 10 times a week. and getting serious about ramping up production schedules. And then I bit off more than I can chew between Ravnica and the Spelljammer project. And I'd already been working on the Martial Powers project, but then I decided to prioritize other things, and then it eventually came up in my docket again. So anyway, at this point I'm rambling a little bit, so don't mind me. And that's kind of what we're all here for, right? There's that, and then I'm gonna build a hand like this. And I know that hand is currently behind the ballista, so I'll have to modify the. I'll just have to put a screen on it, like. There. Like that. Yeah, so all that's what got me to where I am right now. And now I'm at a place where the world is changing on, like, as soon as I start to get a beat on something, the world changes and I have to shake it up. Which is frustrating, but that is telling me, using my own world philosophy that I profess here occasionally, I can't really get sour about these changes, because I think the world changes as soon as my reality changes, as soon as I acquire the skills needed for me to take the next step, for my reality to change into something bigger and better. You get stuck in a place in your life until you figure out what you don't get. And when you finally figure out what's that thing that you haven't been getting, that's when like when the Zelda puzzle gets solved and the dungeon opens. And you now have a whole new place to explore. And so I have this feeling that my ability now to be able to produce larger scale projects and to be able to successfully stream them is telling me that I am evolving out of the type of production that I had before into this larger space of actively engaging with people and being able to produce things with people live, which tells me that I will probably be getting into more Patreon and more Kickstarter stuff. Well, any Kickstarter stuff in the future, because both of those mediums are designed around direct engagement and having audience buy-in at the beginning of what you're doing, instead of in this process where we're at right now. I'm building a thing and I'm hoping people are interested, but there's no guarantee the book is going to turn a profit, because no one asked me or said that, yeah, we're interested in this, unless they show up, they listen to me spiel about shit for a while, and then like, oh yeah, that's actually really fucking cool. I want to come back and check this out when it's done, to at least take a look at it, which is, again, why I provide free previews to stuff, so that if people do check it out, they can be like, yeah, I want to use this, but I can't buy it yet. But when I can buy it, I will. And that's, like I was talking yesterday, that's me when I was 12. I'd go to the bookstore and hang out and read, like, I'd read the most recent Dungeon magazine, or I would read the Dungeoneer's Survival Guide, or I would read like Oriental Adventures from first edition or whatever. The Manual of the Plains was a book that I would pore over. And back in those days, in the 80s, they were only $12 a book. Basically, a dime a page, right? A 120-page Manual of the Plains book was $12. So it was like basically a buck every 10 pages, or a dime per page. But I only made $5 mowing a lawn each weekend, so it took me 3 weekends to accumulate enough money for me to buy my next book. But that's where I was too young to drive to date. I was never going to drive because I'm too blind for that, and that's something I didn't have to think about yet until I got into high school. But during, when I was 12 to 15, almost all my money just went to D&D books, art books, different role-playing games, D&D in particular. And that's kind of when I really got into locking in, like, this is the kind of stuff that I want to do. And by 16, I was actively learning art anyway. Like there was no internet when I was 16, so I had to go to the bookstore, and I had to go to the library to find as much information about art and like how to do art as I could. And then I went to college when I was 18. I started taking art classes as well, and then I dropped out because I realized that I was actually kind of just like hiding from the realities of growing up. And I went to college because I wanted an environment. I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and I can't drive, so I really had to make friends that were willing to come out to the farm and pick me up before going back to the city and having fun. So I was a burden. So I had to make myself worth the burden, which means my house ended up becoming a drug and party house. And during my late high school, college years, and then I went to university away from home so that I could start growing independently. Realized that artwork, I realized that I had already learned enough on my own through my own education and purchasing books that college wasn't actually teaching me to be an artist. I'd actually have to go to art school, and I didn't want to pay the $50,000 or whatever in the early 90s that it would be needed to go to art school. So I just dropped out, got a job, became a salesperson, and then I worked at a microchip factory. I managed a political fundraising call center. I worked for Chase Credit Card in their fraud department, pursuing Russian mobsters and creating fake debit cards, and doing most of the fraud during that time was coming through GameSpot. People buying and selling games, which was just basically a mafia racket, where they'd sell basically a non-existent item for $100, and they would just flip transaction after transaction, and then end up laundering $1 million with 10,000 transactions on fake credit cards. It was pretty great, like chasing that stuff. And I also did people that were trying to steal identities by creating false credit cards. We'd block use of their credit card, forcing them to go to a bank, and then try to prove that they're the person that they are while we're calling the cops on them. Fun stuff like it was a lot of fun stuff, and then a lot of policies about customer engagement started to occur to limit liability to corporations, because like we would get cashiers to distract potential criminals at the point of sale while we would call 911 and send cops to the grocery store to arrest them live on the phone while they're trying to use a fake credit card. Like we would catch counterfeiters and identity thieves in literally in the moment. We could request ATM footage to document if somebody was legitimately having their card stolen, or like if it was actually their kid that was using their credit card. So we would have to go do all the investigation research for that type of stuff. And I eventually got out of that into mortgages and investments and insurance sales. And then I got out of that and got into corporate marketing and advertising campaigns. And now I do marketing analysis for an advertising agency here in Seattle. So that's kind of the pathway of careers that I've gone through over my years as a kid. But it all started in restaurants, me flipping burgers and throwing pizzas, and then I went to from art school I went to culinary school, and then I realized that most of the certification and like chefliness that comes along is really just politics and ass kissing. And once I realized that was the industry, I bailed out of that, got a job at a local Italian restaurant. I had 3 semesters of culinary school under my belt, so I was able to easily land a prep cook position. So I'd come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, load inventory off of the truck into our warehouse, and then I'd make cheesecakes. And I'd make cheesecakes, put them in the oven. I'd make 100 gallons worth of marinara sauce in the morning. I'd shuck 10 pounds worth of shrimp. I'd cut up 10 pounds worth of button mushrooms. I would bread 40 pounds of mozzarella cheese for cheese sticks. I'd make pasta. It was insane. Like, I did all this shit that I was trained to do in the early years, the early semesters of culinary school. Teaches you how to maintain a kitchen, how to moderate inventory, how to keep shit straight, how to make sure you stay compliant with regulations, and how to prep cook, how to prep vegetables, how to prep meat, how to prep dry sundries, so you can, and how to follow a simple recipe. These were all the skills that I needed to be a successful prep cook in a restaurant. And since I had formal trade school licensing, I automatically got a job, and I got it at a higher rate than they were initially offering. So, like, I'm on fucking cloud 9 as a 22-year-old. Like, I've got a decent, like, it was effectively like a $20 an hour job. It's like, this is well above minimum wage. I have no expenses. I live with 2 other guys that are still in college, that have grants or family funding to pay for rent. So that became my D&D team, and I still hang out with them online occasionally. So it's a good time. This is sculpting out. I'm getting happy with where we're at here. I've been rambling a lot, but we've been molding the shape of these things as we go, so it certainly hasn't been wasted time. I'm just on a tear this morning, so I'm gonna grab. Let's grab that. But yeah, this is the history of Phil. So my life has basically been a series of moving from one change of reality to, like, I've been in, God, the microchip factory was probably the largest. Like, I went from working in a restaurant to a political fundraising call center, which I eventually ended up managing. And then from there, I started working at a microchip factory, and then from there, I started working at Chase fraud department, and then from there, I got into market, insurance, mortgage, and securities sales, and then from there, I got into marketing. So that's the cacophony of industries that I've worked in, and these were all within walking distance of where I live because I can't drive. So the only reason I took the jobs that I took is because I could walk to them, and I BS'd my way into getting a job there, and then proved myself that I was a worthwhile investment, and then climbed the ladder. So my basically the career of Phil has been about what am I capable of getting to, and how can I make what I know how to do work for the thing that I need to, the thing that I can get to do for a living. And that just basically evolved me into, because I'm blind, right? I'm legally blind. I can't see like you can. I can't read what you can read. I can't drive. I've got severely limited range of vision. I don't have any color. I don't have any depth perception. I have horrible reflexes because I can't see something coming to me basically until it's within arm's reach anyway. And at that point, I have to have Spider-Man reflexes to be able to catch or dodge it. So, like, I couldn't do sports. So I was always cerebral by nature and had to learn how to adapt to the reality that was handed to me, knowing that everyone that I wanted to be around or avoid would see me coming or going far sooner than I would. So I was always at a disadvantage in almost every physical circumstance I was, which of course meant to me getting bullied a lot, and me not being able to drive meant I was a very late bloomer on the dating scene. Which is why college was so important to me, because it put me on a campus where everyone was already on foot, where it was basically like, it was basically like teenager, early 20s daycare, if you really think about it. Universities are basically daycares for kids that are attempting to learn an education for something that's going to make them feel safe about being thrust out of the nest into the real world. And when I realized that's basically what's going on, and it's really stupid expensive to do it, and that I've spent a number of years on equal ground with everyone else, it gave me a chance to get rid of the chip on my shoulder, rebuild my personality to be thankful for the people that were around me. And it really started to shift my perspective about, I know I can do anything that I want. I've proven at this point that I can achieve anything that is put before me, and that the things that are put before me and I'm inspired to do, half the time is just to prove that I can do it. And that's like when I got into color, even though I can't see color. That's when one of my friends just outright challenged me. It's like, why don't you just try painting in color? You cry about that you can't, that you'll never be able to get as far as you want as an artist. Well, why don't you just try it before you know that you can't? And then sure enough, I figured it out. And that's when I started to realize that, life's kind of just a game that's there to create challenges for you to test how big of a dragon do you want to slay, whether personal or public. And most of the dragons that I slay have been personal demons. And so it makes me pretty cocky about my opinion on stuff. So I'm still sculpting my personality too. What's up, Kajiki? Can you try to make a D&D campaign in YouTube and stream it? And like, you are the DM and 4 persons will play, and the persons are the only that can access to the chat. I mean, we could do that. The problem with streaming online with players is that D&D games don't go the way that you expect them to. Half the fun of being in a role-playing game is the chaos. And what can happen as a result of that is feelings can occasionally get hurt. And so if you're streaming a non-predictable event where people are potentially going to get triggered because you don't know them well enough to avoid, giraffes with knife as a trigger condition for them, you can stumble into that, and then you can end up making really awkward moments, or somebody wants to leave, and then the stream gets weird. Like when it's just you and your friends that are playing, you understand each other's limits, or if you break them, you already are friends, so you can get over it. But if I would be playtesting something, it would be with effectively strangers, and I can't guarantee the level of quality because they're not being paid, they're not being contracted to be on stream. So if something goes sideways, it could go really fucking sideways, and you got to be really careful about that. Streaming stuff sounds like a neat idea, but when you take things like liability into account, it's a dangerous proposition for you to build something around that. So generally, I generally don't stream playtest content. I will stream what I've learned about what I'm doing from the playtesting, but I've got a lot of playtest content that I've recorded that isn't live, that I'll put out there as like you have to have an email to have a link to this thing that we recorded, because we recorded it for playtesting purposes, with the caveat of, hey, we could potentially publish this at some point as a on YouTube, but A, I never would unless I had everyone's consent to do so, and B, the quality of the content needs to be high enough that it's actually worth somebody else watching. Like I was talking about earlier, people get bored to death watching me build diagrams, and I learned pretty quickly I should not be investing stream time on diagrams unless I'm trying to prove a point. And so for the most part, I'm just doing illustration, or like the game design I do, like for the martial power system that we'll do later on today. There's a lot of interest around that system, so I can afford to stream that live because I know people are going to look at it. And when people show up, they're generally interested, and it's a fun time, and it's and at some point it becomes kind of collaborative, which is really cool. But yeah, streaming, dangerous. Very, very dangerous to do that. You have to be super you either have to have people that are contracted and compensated to do it. And it could be that the compensation is, yeah, I have my own channel, I want to boost my presence, I'll happily follow your rules and participate in your playtest, but they have to be professionals to do that. You have to be able to fire them if there starts to be a conflict, and there needs to be some sort of non-breach, that you're not hurting anybody's feelings because you have that all bound up. And that's a lot more fucking paperwork than I really want to put together for just a simple playtest. Now, having said that, I will record all of these because they are testing and they need to be reviewed to see how the game, like half the thing, like the playtest I'll be doing for the martial power system, it already works at level 12 to 19, now about 20, our team's about to hit 20th level. So, and we've been using the martial power system from level 12 to 19 at my home table. So I know it works, and I know it's fun, but I have to play test it at the low end to make sure that other people like it. It's not just my cult of personality that's getting people to say, yeah, I love this because they love my campaign. And it just happens that they're play testing the martial power system in my campaign. But this is my home table, so they're already in love with my games. So otherwise they wouldn't stick around for the duration of a 20 level campaign, right? They obviously like what we're doing. Otherwise they would have left a long time ago. So that is a biased audience, but the mechanics work. And as a DM and a designer, I've had a chance to see how these systems play out at high levels for what has now been a couple years. It's been over a year now that I've been using at my home table. So I know it works at high levels, but we now have to farm it out to other people to make sure that it works outside of my own bubble. And again, we have to make sure that it works at the low. It's as fun at the low end as it is at the high end. And that's a tall order because you have a shitload of resources available to you at the high end. So we have to make sure that the system still feels fun and people want to engage with it, even though you have limited resources at the low end. It should be fun because the resource is still scaling like all other D&D resources in 5th edition. So it's not like you're losing any strength on anything. But we have to do it to make sure that it's playing correctly. So again, it's not reasonable to assume going in that we're going to live stream this stuff as playtest content, because if something goes sideways, it has to be resolved, and resolving it on screen is no, you do not want to do that. That's very, very dangerous to yourself. Anyway, but I love the enthusiasm. Thank you. But yes, I will design the playtest on stream. And that will probably attract people to wanting to play in it. So it's definitely worth my time to build that stuff out here on stream with you guys, because we've been building the book on stream, and a portion of the book is the creatures, using the martial power system to supplement and alter the creatures that you'll be encountering. So it's really necessary. It's valuable time for me to be able to stream that stuff, the development of it, because that just folds into the stream time that we've already spent in developing things. You know, I feel like I'm going to start talking like Mojo Jojo from the Powerpuff Girls here if I keep reiterating myself too much. But that hand feels a little big, to be honest. I'm imagining that old joke when you put your hand on your face like that and then somebody punches your hand. Fucking A. But that hand is about punchable. It's about a punchable size hand. Yeah, we're good. We're good there. So that's good. That silhouette's looking pretty good. I'm going to increase the size on these a bit. Nice. Now you're the right proportions. The real shame about not streaming the content is not sharing with people how much fucking fun it was. Like, we got a lot of footage for the Descent into Avernus campaign that we ran to test the Spelljammer and the mass combat system that we had been developing over a year ago. That shit was super fucking fun. And I've got dozens of hours of the Eberron adventure that I stream on Mondays and Thursday nights. And there was a lot of fucking legitimate fun that we were having doing that stuff. But again, it's no one ever agreed that, yeah, that stuff's going to go live. I think a lot of the content is okay to be streamed for people to look at it, to see what it is. But I don't think I would publish it until the product is done, and then review it to see what in the playtest survived and stayed. Like, a lot of the mechanics in those books changed since the playtesting, like a lot of nuances and little tweaks and stuff. But the core of it's still good, but it's so radically different. Like the Descent into Avernus campaign, using these mechanics was such a different game. None of that's represented in this book. Like running around in dragonfly winged trucks that, like, we were Dr. Zhivago-ing hell wasps in the Descent into Avernus campaign, and breeding wasps to mutate them to build basically like Jason the Wheeled Warrior flying, like Lex type dragonfly battleships to fly around and fight demons and stuff. Like, that has nothing to do with this, but that's how you could use this. And that's like a super tangential, like it doesn't have a lot of practical application compared to what this document actually is. But it's interesting. So like, I can see why people would be at least like passingly interested in seeing that stuff. But ultimately, I just don't think it's good content. So, as much fun as it, like, almost nothing about the what do I say? Like the first 20 hours of Eberron content that we have were maps that didn't survive, that we then had to change all the maps and change the creatures and the CRs and stuff like that, and then rerun the playtest again and again and again. So like, most of the earlier content is no longer relevant anymore. It's just random. At this point, it's just kind of random, and a lot of it was really bad. Like TPKing a party because we didn't have the proper CR scaling for an encounter, for instance. It's like, I don't know how valuable that is for people to look at. Anyway, I've probably gone on about that enough. I think you guys get it. You probably get it. Okay, so I think this guy's at a place where I can... yeah. Where are we at? 7:17. I've been rambling for a while, so I'm going to take a quick break here to take a sip. Lean back for a moment. I'm happy with my silhouettes. It's time for us to start rendering. So, this guy that we've been working on, we're going to render him. And then this guy, and then this guy, and then this guy. So, we'll work our way forward. And then once we finish rendering the four blokes, we'll finish up the anatomy of our ballista. I'm going to finish the asteroids tonight, most likely. So, and if I don't, I'll be able to finish them tomorrow. We definitely won't finish the blokes tonight, this morning. So we got about 40 minutes left, so we're doing good. But we'll probably get this guy done and maybe some of this guy done, and then that'll give me a chance to get this guy and probably this guy done. I'm hoping tomorrow afternoon. So we might not actually be 100% done with this by the time Monday comes around. Depending, I've got a party to go to tomorrow night, and then my schedule. I've got girl time on Sunday, so I won't have any time to work on this. So I might be done by Monday. I'd love to be done by Monday, but me sitting here talking about it isn't going to make it happen. So why don't we get back to work, you lazy hunk? Enough dreaming about tomorrow and wake up. It's already tomorrow. If you haven't noticed, Phil, everything you ever dreamed that you would do, you are currently doing. So, Twist your head around. There we go. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go. There. Don't you argue with Gina Davis. She's going to win that fight. I like this. I like this style of art where I build out the silhouette and then I keep stacking details inside of the silhouettes. Like we have the face framed here, right? So then I can sculpt the bone structure on the face with highlights and shadows, staying inside the space that we already built. This defines the head where the face sits inside of. And if the silhouette feels and looks appropriate, then most likely all of the details are going to fit inside of that space. This is just like one style, but it's a style. I find it's a way for me to be able to it's a really good way for me to compartmentalize the task, to break it up. Like at some point, like that level of detail on that shirt is probably sufficient. Like how much detail do I really need on this puffy shirt? It's probably good to go. So as soon as the muse lets go of me, come on baby, as soon as she lets go, I can move on to like his pants. But she's not quite done with this color here. Because the muse she knows what she wants to do. I have a literal muse that sits in my heart, and she feeds me information. Sometimes when I turn off my brain real good, I'm literally not steering my body anymore. It is just whatever instincts I have is what I refer to as my muse, and she knows how to pilot like my reflexes to paint in a certain way. A lot of creators, a lot of artists get to this place where their body can reflexively do the task without actively thinking about the task that they're doing. They call that you can look up the term autonomic art or autonomic painting or autonomic drawing, and you'll see artists that are significantly better than me doing the same thing, where their body is just creating and they're not consciously really thinking about what it is that they're creating. I'm not dictating each line and where this shadow is supposed to be on this lapel. It's just my body, my camera, my eyes become a camera, not an opinion. It's my arm and my hand that are performing the actions independently of me, because my brain has enough of a mental library of what things are supposed to look like, and the information that's taken in through my eye cameras can then be translated directly into subroutines that my brain reflexively is performing motor functions to execute what I know this thing is supposed to be without specifically visualizing what it is first. I am in the process of discovery with you at the same rate of discovery. I didn't know this guy's hair was gonna be this way. I just did the thing, and it's like, oh, that's actually pretty cool hair. I'm pretty happy with that, but I didn't plan that. I just knew I need a mop of hair on this guy's head, and this is what the muse created. So the muse is the subroutines that run inside of me that produce the art. but at the same time, it's feeding me information and ideas and opinions and emotions that are tied to the activity of creating the artwork itself, which then becomes an inspiration for me to have a topic of conversation that I don't really know I'm having until I observe it like you guys do from a third-party perspective. Oh, Phil's talking about his history of work and how fucked up it is. So, stuff like that. Like, most of the time, I'm a passenger in this process like you are. But that takes a deep level of trust in your intuitive and instinctive actions that you're taking to let go of the wheel and allow the process itself create and to become a passenger in that creation process, which to me is a form of meditation, samsara, of living meditation, where I don't actively think about my existence. I am just simply being a passenger in the ride like you are with me now. I am in the same seat as you are as we go through this process of creation. And at the end of it, if you stick around long enough, you'll hear me and see me do this, like, oh, that's super cool. And then I'll discover something in the process as we go through it that when you see it, it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. It's like we're both discovering those things together because the body is producing results that I don't necessarily know are happening. If that makes sense. So I'm going to go look for that pant color down here. Is it here? Oh, that's right. It was a sash. Hold on. Let's go grab a sash then. Wait for it. There it is. Thank you. So here's my darkies and here's my lighties. So I already have the highlights on I already have a highlight color on these pants. So now we can just drop shift into the shadow of it. I was only starting to get inklings of autonomic art processing maybe 2 years ago. And I mean I've been producing art professionally for 20 years. And it's only been in the past couple of years I've gotten to a point where I can just create art without actively thinking about what I'm doing like this. And you'll see the shift as I'm working through different processes. Like when I'm just rendering details and shading and stuff like this, then I can just go on a lark and just talk about stuff for an hour without really even thinking about it. But when I actually have to grind down and start engaging my brain about the logistics, about like where are things positioned and stuff like that, that's when the conversation gets really quiet. Because I'm having to actively engage more of my awareness into, well, okay, hold on, what exactly are we doing right now? Because I have to plan it out. When I have to start planning, I have to start thinking, which stops the intuitive workflow process of the muse. So she has to basically wait for me to catch up. She can already see it. I know she can already see it, and I keep referring to her as a she because it feels like feminine energy when I interact with it inside. And so she's the waifu that lives in my heart, I guess. So here's a fun tip. If you're looking at settling down with somebody, if you can build that relationship with your muse inside of yourself first, and recognize the sort of feelings that your muse broadcasts to you, you can find a partner in your life that feels like a physical expression of who that muse is inside of you. That sense of accomplishment, praise, and assurance that you use to self-talk with yourself. If you build a good relationship of love and respect with your intuition and your inner muse, then you can look for those same properties with your partner outside in the bigger world, so that you're finding a physical manifestation of the muse that helps motivate, excite, and propel you into bigger and better things. And the gal that I have, I feel, hits a lot of those chords. So I'm really happy for the relationship that I have. But like they say in dating, like you don't really know who your partner is until you know who who you are, right? You're going to end up dating yourself. You're going to find somebody that reflects the levels of integrity that you have. You're gonna date somebody that interacts and engages with your social, your level of social comfort. Ideally, the people that you fall in love with are a reflection and a mirror of your own values. So if you don't like your partner, it probably means you don't like yourself. And your partner is just pointing out the things that you don't like about yourself because they are a frame model of the stuff inside of you. If that makes any sense. So getting to know your muse is a way of getting to know the type of partner that you want, because it's an opportunity to find out how you respect and engage with yourself. I didn't know I'd be talking about that today, but again, that's kind of the point that we've been talking about. But it's a tangent, but I think it's a worthwhile tangent. I love this song. Well, game saved. What up? Day 3 of Sculpting the Ballista. At least now the characters aren't wireframes. Right. We just keep moving the ball forward, step by step. You take enough steps, you have a book. What's up, Milo? That most of the time, that's what art is, and a lot of time, how to put it, a lot of the frustration that artists will have with their work is that either they haven't had enough accomplishments and successes in a project to recognize the phases of development, from ideation to excitement to grind to depression to breakthrough to excitement to progression, to frustration, to depression, to breakthrough. You keep cycling through these processes of, oh, I think I know what I'm doing. Crap, I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, okay, I think I know it. Crap, I have no idea what I'm doing. And you'll hit these things at a micro and macro scaling again, at micro and macro levels. Like in this illustration, this very illustration during this time, there have been multiple instances of me being like, I have no idea. Is this piece even worth it? Is it going to be worth a shit when I'm done? I have no idea. But I keep going because I have so many examples in my own personal history of, I think this piece is going to end up, oh wait, it's awesome. You know, like I have so many personal, private examples of me doing artwork where I was in the thick of it and hated it, and all I had to do was just keep at it and keep pushing the pixels until they pushed into a place where I'm like, oh, I get it now. I love this piece. And then I fall in love with it, and I have the emotional energy and the dopamine kick to get through it. I talk about dopamine a lot. You'll have to dig through the past 12 episodes to hear me talking about it off and on. And I think I talked about like maybe 30 episodes too. It comes up occasionally, but artists train themselves to create a dopamine drip feed during the creation process, which is the chemical motivation that we need to persist at any particular task because of the reward that we gain out of it. Excuse me. And the promise of more chemical satisfaction that you gain is also the motivator to continue persisting with the challenge of completing the piece. Artists are chemists that train their biology to reward effort. And most people don't understand that. Most people train themselves to get a dopamine fix from social praise from their peer group or for social media. So there's no directable, translatable skill set from social media praise into a professional business environment, whether it's you're a corporate lackey or a sole proprietor. Social media fixes will not translate into business success, even if your job is a social media influencer. The discipline that goes into producing content or completing a report or crafting a disposition, these are skills that require attention and focus over time. You have to develop a chemical reward system inside of your own body that you are actively sculpting the parameters of release and trigger. If the only time you get a dopamine hit is when you complete a level of Super Mario Brothers, you are going to become addicted to playing Super Mario Brothers. If you create a chemical system where the only time you feel satisfaction is when you get a real estate sale, you're going to become a fanatical real estate salesperson. Probably open your own brokerage and then hate being a broker because you aren't selling real estate anymore. You're managing salespeople. Big transition there, different skill set. Most people don't survive that skill set shift. Like when I took over the call center, the fundraising call center, I had a highly adapted skill set of doing telemarketing sales and influencing decisions over the phone. You have to be able to get a $10,000 political contribution off of a whale during the political season when they're being hit daily for more contributions. What is it that I did, that I said, that I projected that got them to say, okay, this is the guy. He convinced me. I feel the passion. I'm going to give up my checkbook for this. That's what we were trained to do, is to tap into people's passion about the particular political topic that we were trying to raise money for, to get you to open up your wallet. That skill has nothing to do with running a call center designed to do that. It's a very different skill set. And you have to respect the transition. If you don't understand that transition is going to happen, you're going to end up being an ineffective manager, and you're going to end up losing people because you aren't in your role. You're out of frame. You're not in your successful role anymore, which is why recruiting from within as a business strategy is often a bad decision, because the people that were successful aren't often the people that are going to make other people successful. Most of the people that are successful, especially in sales, are lone wolves that cut deals, break arms, and make personal compromises to achieve their monetary and sales success goals. Those are horrible skills to try to translate into a manager. Doesn't work. You have to have a tutor, a coach, a counselor. Those make good managers. People that are also willing to push paperwork and provide reporting to demonstrate. They're like admin coaches, right? They're very much a sideline sort of role, but they have to be good enough in sales to be able to relate to the people that they're leading. So that's why they often say those that can't teach, because teachers are often people that understand the principles of what it is that they are teaching, but aren't so passionate that they're addicted to the game that they are teaching how to play, if that makes sense. What were we talking about? I honestly don't know. That was a... I know that was related to something. I don't think there was a larger point to that. I think I just went on a tear. I think that's what was happening. This is an example of me rendering the leg, and the more I turn off my brain to let the leg get rendered, the more accurately I'm going to be able to make like these folds in the fabric and stuff. But for me to be able to do that, I have to actively disengage my brain from second guessing the reflexive actions that I'm taking. So the best way my muse has to get me to step out of the way so she can get the work done that's on the docket, i.e. this guy's pant leg right now, is to get me into a tear, to start talking about stuff that occupies all of my active thinking. And even then at some point, she'll just take over the conversation. She'll start talking about what she thinks is important for me to talk about, which to me is channeling God. But we all do it through our intuition, our conscious, like our conscience, that little voice that whispers to us. That is your muse, desperately trying to build a conversation with you. Everyone has a muse. In my personal, you can take this for what you want. You know, my beliefs and my philosophies, A, adapt over time as new information becomes available. But B is also the accumulation and correlation of my own personal experiences, which may be incredibly different from yours. So just take what I say as a grain of salt of this is my own personal experience, and this is the rationale that I've been able to develop to retain sanity in the experience of life. Here's a quick tangent for you. Life is pain management, and life is organizing chaos. Like everything about life is organized chaos. The cellular structure inside of creatures is organizing chaos into a larger structure known as an organism. From a single cell up to us, potentially the planet, are different scales and perspectives of organisms in life. We are participants in this planet, often characterized as a virus. And I have thoughts about that I can share with you, but that's not the conversation we're in right now. And it's not just quoting the Matrix. It's different. There's more to it than that. Sorry, I just woke up. I don't remember what we were talking about. I feel like it was important though. Hold on. Give me a second here. On. Their monetary and sales success goals. Those are horrible skills to conversation. She'll start talking about leg, and the more I turn off my brain to let the leg get rendered, the more accurately I'm going to be able to make like these folds in the fabric and stuff. Oh, that's right. Okay, I remember now. The muse. Everyone has a muse. Thank you. So the let's pray. There we go. So the idea here is that your intuition, your conscience, is a relationship that you haven't fully developed with your own muse yet. Artists cheat because we actively seek to turn off our brain and develop our skills to allow an intuitive target or an intuitive worker to use our body to produce the work. I think there's something going on down there that I should be paying attention to. So, from your stuff, I try to find some nice trailers from racing games to edit into my new channel's intro. As you said about art, I'm still going with my 6th channel when popular people have their 5th. Right on, man. So yeah, personal philosophy. We're going to go off the deep end here. It is my personal belief that there is an afterlife and that there are angels, entities that exist outside of time space, that we are in a simulation of sorts, that this reality is simply a game, that when we die, like in Rick and Morty, we're playing Roy. And our goal here in Roy is to learn more, to learn a better appreciation for chaos. I believe that, like in The Good Place, if you've seen The Good Place, what a great show. But the Good Place basically depicts massive spoiler alerts for people that haven't seen The Good Place yet. But I'm going to talk about this for a little bit, and it'll probably be a small piece of a larger... Oh, yeah, it's 7:45. I barely have time for this. But basically, yeah, I'm under the strong opinion that we are all basically running inside of a simulation where we're all learning to put ourselves into limiting circumstances where our biological machinery forces us to have a limited perspective of what reality really is, that we're being fed a very, very small piece of information about a very large universe. And the most important detail about this larger reality that we as humans don't have access to is how much it loves us, and how much we are being taken care of, and how much everything that we perceive in our life here during our mortality is intentionally designed to cut us off from the bigger picture, because we have the opportunity to awaken inside of our life here as our bigger self. That there is a larger reality that wants us to fall in love with being alive, and to risk grinding the guardrail, and to follow our crazy passion pursuits. Damn logic and sensibility. If you're inspired to do it and it's not hurting anyone, then be brave to dive into that. Because that consciousness, that muse that feeds us our whispers of, you should try doing this. Turn left instead of right today. Hey, order the Cobb salad. Go talk to that person. All these little inklings and intuitions that we have no idea why, but we have these impulses, these emotions to do these things, is basically somebody reading the spoiler guide to the story of your life, and is helping you get through the dungeon by being your navigator. Your conscience is your dungeon navigator in the game of you. And the more you build that relationship, the louder that voice sounds inside of you, the higher level shenanigans you as an individual person get to engage in the game of your own life. And the more deeply you dive into it, the more this muse wakes up as an actual presence in your life, and it starts to take over for you. And all these intuitive decisions that you make, you shift your perspective away from being this human that has these intuitions. At some point it flips to you become the intuition. You wake up inside of yourself, realizing the bigger person that you are, the heavenly soul that you are, has been attempting to wake up inside of this body your entire life. And when you realize that, that's when you actually start to wake up and realize that you're actually playing Roy in heaven outside of yourself, injecting yourself into this tight, limited perspective of this human experience to give yourself the most debilitating limitations of a soul possible, to not even know that this is all an illusion, and that you're really safe in heaven, and that when the quarter burns out on the game of life that you're playing, there's someone else waiting in line to have a crack at it too. And then you get to go have a beer, catch up with your friends, put the quarter back on the machine, and wait for your next go to try it again because it's so fun. Or maybe I'll play Claire next time. You know, Phil's a fun ride, but I think I want to play Claire for a change. So you're going to load into that game, and you're going to start having this whispering interaction through the game of Claire, and you become the intuition for Claire. And after a while, the game of Claire starts to realize that it's not actually a person, it's a game being played. And that's when you get to hand over the reins to the person that's actually playing the game. And that's when you have full, living, awakening experiences of meditating and experiencing life as a passenger. And as Bill Hicks used to say, it's all just a ride. So we are all, as a collective body, having more and more experiences as a species of these awakening moments, as more people enter this reality of life is just a game and it's here to be fun. And it's just a process of us learning that we can trust our intuition. The whole point is for us to learn to surrender control. which has oddly parallel religious implications from various world religions, that it is our place to obey. And while many people fear that effect, the actual obey is learning to let go of the remote control and letting the person that's actually playing the game stop fighting the control stick. And then the game, us, starts playing the way that heaven wants us to. Artists are fortunate because the act of art is actively training us to surrender that control. So that's why artists have this euphoria of zero time, of zero space, of escaping into this Zen reality of this flow state. That flow state is the natural state of heaven. And artists are, or like extreme athletes are also artists, just like dancers are artists. Athletes are artists competing. The act of competition is performing their art. And when you get these really high levels of proficiency, you allow the flow, the sport, the art, the game to take over for you. And you just watch it happen. There are many interviews of artists and athletes talking about entering that flow state where they are no longer in control, that they have mastered their art to a point where they can trust their body to take over and pilot on their behalf. And the more they stay out of the way, the more amazing the results they produce. Michael Jordan, fantastic example of that. Tiger Woods, fantastic example of that. These are artists operating at the highest level in their chosen art. And they are no longer in control of their body. They are passengers in their sport. They become the sport. Artists become the art that they create. These are gifts from heaven. And most people that aren't involved in a creative energy outlet like this never have the opportunity. They have to find a way to enter that flow state. Artists are, I think, are people that are on a track further down the road to acquiring a relationship with their muse, because they have a muse. As the Greek sculptors would put it, there are muses that inspire your creation, and they compel you to create these results, to have these conversations, to produce these results. That is the process of discovery. So that's a piece of it anyway. That's all of the time I really have to talk about it today. But these are the type of things, these are the experiences I have as an artist as I'm going through this process. And I've gotten to a point where I can talk about these things. And the more I talk about them, the happier I am with the results that I produce. That stuff makes me turn off my brain and process through that conversation, while the muse is controlling both the conversation and the artwork. She's taking full control over my body, and I just become a portal to transmit information through, which is technically, according to the Greeks, an oracle. We are all attempting to become, like, the point of being here is to become an oracle, for us to be able to have a feedback loop where we can feed heaven to each other and experience a higher level of intuitive reality, where we can feel the safety of reality doing everything it can to become self-conscious, to bring heaven to earth, for us to all have this level of bliss, comfort, and safety, where we can use our minds to be able to intuitively and creatively produce experiences that are better for everyone, that we don't have to protect ourselves from others, that we can recognize each other as brethren, that there's a level of trust that we can give unto each other, where we can not have to be afraid of our homes, of ourselves, of our safety, that we don't have to worry about having resources taken from us. We are all slowly ratcheting up our level, and we're about to jump into a new tier. We're like in the second tier of a D&D game, where we're just about to start gaining high magic, like 6th level plus, where we can start tapping into other planes of existence, where we can start transporting ourselves between realities. Like, all the high level magic shit is like 11 plus, and that's just half the game. And that's the exciting thing. It's like once you get into this muse and you start surrendering control and start getting into this higher level of creating reality, you're performing wishes. You're granting wishes. You're altering reality. You're shifting planes. You're creating. You are awakening. Role-playing games are an amazing analogy for we as a species are attempting to accomplish. So that's why I stream, because it's fun. So anyway, that's all the time we have today. I got some stuff done. Didn't get as far along as I wanted. I never do. That's not the point, though. But I'm really happy with how this leg is coming along. I have some cleaning up to do. But yeah, we're just going to keep doing this stuff. This is the kind of shit we talk about when we dive in deep. I'm going to be back today to do some mechanics stuff for design work for the martial power system. We're going to finish the Rune Night today. I'll probably have maybe a 90-minute lunch for me to be able to do that. So I anticipate being back probably in 5 hours. It's 8 o'clock here. No, I think in 4 hours. It's 8 o'clock here in Seattle. I'll probably jump on at noon. Yeah, you can start looking for me at noon. So if you want to catch up on that, just keep an eye on your YouTube, like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon down here to get notifications of when we go live in the future. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers, so if you're new to the channel and you think this stuff is cool, yeah, like, subscribe, and stick around. We're here 6 days a week. So, see you then. But I want to use this life as effectively as possible. There may be nothing after this, nothing. Well, see, that's a great thing. Is that if I'm wrong, the way that I'm playing is I'm playing for keeps here on the planet. I'm trying to move forward as much as I can, follow my instincts and my intuition as closely as I can to have the most epic experience being alive as I challenge and dare myself to have. As an artist, I keep my ass in a chair a lot. That's just what painters do. But I get to have these inner space explorations, and I'm blessed to have a platform here that I can share those experiences with you in real time as I have them. I don't plan any of this stuff. This is just me talking off the cuff because this is what I'm inspired to talk about right now. You can have a different opinion if you want to, but there's nothing about my perspective about reality that says anyone else is wrong. It's just a matter of framing it, and from where I'm coming from, this is the only life that I have. If I don't awaken during this life, I have to get to the back of the line and then put my quarter on the dashboard and wait for it to be my turn again, and I get to try again. I can keep playing this game as often as I want, but the goal is to wake up inside of it as early as I can so that I can realize that there's somebody playing this game and it's not just left up to me to try to figure it out for myself. That there's a greater player that knows how the game works, and there's a fucking map in a Nintendo Power magazine that you can flip open to where Phil goes from building this book to running a Kickstarter in 3 years, and you can see now you're speed running to get from one part of reality to the next. You're speed running to get to the next tier of reality for yourself inside of your game. Anyway, you can believe me if you want to or not, but role-playing games are a fun analogy for that creation process. So, but we can debate it later in the future. I love the tussle. So I'm out of here for the day. I'll be back in probably 4 hours. I'll catch you guys then. Thanks a lot for